Hey everyone, welcome to My Travel Cafe. My name is Lissa Callahan, and we're here today to talk about what it's like to be a psychic. Welcome Erin Sullivan to the podcast. Erin is a professional clairvoyant, and I actually know her through my own training. So she's so fun, and I've just really been enjoying and looking forward to this particular podcast because it's just, I think, very important for us to learn, especially for those of us that have felt like we might have clairvoyant abilities, what our experiences are, what we've been through, what we can do with our talents, and just be able to talk to somebody that's been through it. So, Erin, if you could, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, and what does it mean to be clairvoyant to you?
I give clairvoyant readings, and I don't say that I predict the future, although some clients have come back and said that I said this would happen and it happened. But I just like to say that I read energy. So whatever is in their energy field, I tune into. I get a picture in my mind's eye and I describe to the client what I'm seeing because they may have a different interpretation, or a couple days later they might say, oh, I think that picture meant that. But that's what I do during my readings. And I try to stay away from the word psychic, although I go to psychics and I use the word when I tell my friends, oh, I went to see my psychic. But I really want to stress I don't read the future. I just read energy. But I've been going to psychics regularly for probably 11 years, and I love it.
With our topic, like I said, we're kind of letting some people know what we do or what our experiences have been. One, so that they can feel like they're not alone, but to see what their possibilities are, what they can do with their particular talents. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about your business too. But let me ask you, when did you know you were clairvoyant?
This is such a great question, Melissa. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think if you ask me tomorrow or next week, I'll have a different answer. But I definitely knew 4 years ago for sure. That was when everything shifted, and I was giving readings and people were saying, wow, you're spot on. And then I just really just was enjoying it, and I just kept doing it. Then I was, people wanted to pay me. So I just evolved organically. And then I ended up working at Quest Bookstore, which is related to the Theosophical Society in America, which is in a suburb of Chicago in Wheaton, Illinois, giving reading. Just ended up literally falling into it. I think of different people late in life who discovered that they were a talented singer, or they discovered that they wanted to start a business and then their business took off. I didn't plan to do it. It just happened, and it's been awesome. Really. And I meet so much. I really love the tribe of spiritual people. I meet just great people, working, the clients that I have, and then people like you. I just enjoy it.
So true. I totally agree with that. And I resonate with that completely because I went through something similar during the COVID. We all had this time on our hands, right?
Right.
It's like, all of a sudden, I'm thinking, well, what can I do with myself? And I started thinking, I have always wondered if I truly had this ability, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. Actually, let me ask you now. There's probably something that led you to think that this might be something you'd enjoy. So what were your experiences as a child or up through this point that made you think, maybe there's something to this?
Sure. So I grew up, my grandmother would, for fun, read palms, just for fun, would read your palm. She wasn't, trained in it, but her mother was born in Ireland, and she read tea leaves in Oak Park, Illinois. Wow. And so there was some acceptance in my family of a spiritual realm, and dreams were always considered important. If you could write down your dreams, and that might send you a message. And another trick my grandma would say is, who do you think's on the phone? And so then I would predict as a young person who I think was calling on the phone back when phones were plugged into the walls.
I love that they were so supportive and helping to develop what probably was a family trait, which is really interesting. Because I think a lot of people don't have that experience. So when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. For myself, it was a little bit different when I was very young. And I think there's actually a lot of people that could identify with this particular thing. My skill or my ability has always been to see spirit. I feel it. I have other clairs as well. But the strongest one is probably being able to see spirit beings. And so when I was very young, like many children, I was convinced that there were things in the room, right? You have to close the closet door, or I would sleep with the blanket because I just knew that there was somebody in there. So that was like the first introduction to the whole thing. But I would have dreams, even from like 5 or 6 years of age, where I just knew that was probably going to happen. Even though it may seem like some sort of bizarre circumstance, it's like I was convinced that was going to happen. But as I got older, I was raised in more of a religious environment, and not to knock that, because it really helped me to identify with spirit and to know what it felt like, when certain things were, as in our training, when we get the exclamation mark, it's like, oh, yeah, I get the feeling, or I start crying and I'm like, okay, that's my indication that I'm right on the money. So that connection was wonderful. But on the downside, I was taught that, you really don't talk about those things. You don't invite them into your home. And so these abilities that came naturally were just kind of pushed down. So like you, I started wondering, as I got older, and I wasn't quite so pushed down with my abilities. What's out there? Is this something I could do? Right. So let's ask about that. I believe you mentioned to me earlier that during the COVID is when you started thinking about, if this is something that you could do. What was the trigger, and where did it go from there to make you want to learn how to develop your clairvoyant abilities?
So during COVID, I'm living in Illinois at that time, and so am in a suburb of Chicago, and things were in this state were really shut down. And so I took Golden Rose classes online, and that's how I met you, through the Golden Rose class. And that teacher, Dr. Lawrence Cielo, he learned from the Berkeley Psychic Institute. And there's a reason I'm going into all this. So Louis Boxwick started the Berkeley Psychic Institute in the San Francisco area after World War II. So as I understand it, he was actually a prisoner of war in the Philippines, and some of the healers in the Philippines took Louis out of line took him out of the camp, the POW camp, to train him in healing arts. And yeah, that's how I understand it. So then Louis Bostwick, sorry, pronounce his name wrong, Louis Bostwick came back to San Francisco with his wife, and he started giving these trainings. And so then it turned into a class, the Berkeley Psychic Institute. Jump forward, I took the class during COVID, and then I just realized something shifted, and I just could give readings easily, and I just was able to do it. I had been a meditator. I think that may have helped as well. Develop my structure, my energy structure, and my third eye abilities. But also, then I also ran into another healer in the area who trained with some of Louis Bostwick teachers, because he had directors that he had personally trained. And so then I've been talking and learning with him quite a bit as well. So that's just the odds of us meeting and having the same teacher in common, right?
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So similar to Erin, same kind of thing. During the COVID, we all had this extra time. It's like, what do I do with my time? And that's when I started thinking maybe, I should look and see if there's something that I could do to see if this is an actual thing. I actually have a funny story. And this is something I hope to do this for my own students. I took a test from Dr. Cielo. Are you psychic? Right. So that was, I think, on YouTube or something. And I went, well, that was easy. So, and I've done other psychic tests and I thought, well, okay, maybe this is odd. But I've learned since that I'm not somebody that really is a remote viewer. I'm somebody that really kind of reads more with my heart chakra. So I took one of the first free classes, right? So there's like the first class where we learn how to run, we learn how to ground, and then we learn how to run energy through our energetic channels. And I got a migraine for like 3 days. Oh, wow. I thought to myself, this isn't for me. So for like a year, I started different things. I went with one instructor and I got some things, but it didn't, I didn't stick with it. And so then I tried somebody else's techniques. And I'm glad I did that because I learned something. And that's something I've always learned and felt, that you can always learn something from any teacher, no matter how much you think you know. There's always something that you can learn. But after a year, I thought, I got more out of that one class when I had a headache than I did with this whole year worth of stuff. And so I just committed to it and went, okay, well, I'll just do it. And sure enough, first class, I got into the headache. But after that, it was fine. So for me, it was a process of opening that third eye that just had not been used for a few decades. So that was interesting.
That is fascinating about the headache.
It's not so funny. But I want people to know, sometimes it's not learning to be clairvoyant and even any spiritual path. It's not always this sunshine and raindrops that you think it's going to be. There's things that we experience, whether that be what people call the dark night of the soul, or because you're having to clear out all of this information that's been planted, within your chakras or your belief systems. And it takes a while to clear all of that out. And it's a lifetime process. Quite honestly, I don't know why we think of it as a short period of time, but there seems to be an intense period.
That's so interesting you brought up Dark Night of the Soul. I've been contemplating that idea again lately, and I that was a big thing back. I think Carolyn Mace talked about that back in the 90s or 2000s, and then a lot of people talk about it, but I just remember really taking notice when she was talking about it. And that's true. It's an identity crisis. I've had several different dark nights of the soul. Often when people in my family passed away, it kind of made me rethink, who am I in this world? What is my identity? What's my place? Different life-changing events. I've gone through that dark night of the soul, and that we all go through it. It's just necessary to then, it kind of, I think I did ground back into what are my values, who am I? How do I want to be in the world, and went back to the values. And then I've always been open to spiritual ideas, alternative healing, chakras and auras, and understanding those concepts. So, right. And I think kind of puts us on that path, although you were already on it, quite honestly. But for me, it was looking at the world a completely different way than I'd looked at it for several decades. So, we all have this many paths up the mountain, right? We all have that thing that we find, hopefully, that helps us to get in touch with our, our higher self and our life purpose. But I just love, that makes me think about this. So you now are a professional, right? You give readings and that type of thing. And so I'm going to ask you, what made you decide to go ahead and do this as a profession? So it literally did happen organically. I didn't just make a decision, I'm going to do this. I just was doing things that I was interested in during COVID. And through that, I realized I had this talent. I had a clear shift where I noticed, okay, I shifted and I'm really giving very good readings at this point. And then friends of mine I gave readings to, and they told their friends, and then I started getting paying clients. And then I walked into Quest Bookstore in Wheaton, and they have clairvoyants and alternative healers here. And a friend of mine worked at the bookstore, and she said, "Why don't you give readings?" And I didn't even think about that. And then she said, "Yeah." And so then I applied for the job, and within less than a week, I was hired, and I was at TheoFest, which they have once a year. And I was hired about 5 days before TheoFest and was at TheoFest. It just really happened quickly and nothing that I planned. And then it just all fell into place.
Right.
Yeah.
Synchronicity. That's what I like to say. It's just it all happens the way that it's meant to happen. When you're ready, it all happens when things are meant to happen. So now you do professional readings, right? Now you were a student before, you tried different modalities. You talked about Reiki. Now with the reading, what do you like about being a reader? What brings you joy or fulfillment from that?
I love giving readings. I really do. And I learn so much from people, and I also feel it's a nice energy exchange, that hopefully I give them some insight. I really just I ask that they get some insight or new awareness that might bring them closer to healing something or help them move forward in life. So I also, for some reason, I'll just know, I think if you call this guy, this might help. Or, how somebody says, oh, I know this plumber or this electrician. I know this person for this issue in the spiritual world, or this healer for that issue in the spiritual world. So sometimes that happens, and that's a great feeling. Not all the time, but if somebody shows up like that, that's great. But so the things that when somebody's looking to move and they have 5 different cities, and I can just tell them the picture that shows up and the energy that shows up for them, and that might provide them more clarity. People that may be not aware of things that are stressing them out in life, and somehow I see a picture, and then they say, "Oh, that makes sense."
You ever feel like you're teaching as much as you're getting a reading? I feel like a lot of times I'll give a reading and they'll make, I feel like I need to put that into context. Let me tell you how this works, and it's not like I feel like I'm some big expert at it, but I know from my own perspective, I've had readings even long before, I decided to do this. And I wish that I'd had some information so that I could leave a reading and go, oh, okay. How can I go about doing this? They've laid out this plan. How would a person go about doing something, whether that would be learning how to ground or running energy? It's really interesting. How about yourself? Do you ever find that you're teaching as much as you're reading?
So I don't teach in a reading. I just explain how I read in the beginning to each client. But I've had a lot of interest in, what does it mean? Because I'll say, it's important for you to develop a relationship with your inner self. And many people aren't clear on what that is. So I do plan to teach a course on how to develop a relationship with your inner self. And
I love that.
But yeah, I think that in my readings, I just tend to get to the core of an issue for someone, I think, and then hopefully provide some clarity or some just unconditional love for that person and some space for them to grow or to find some hope again.
And Erin is exceptional at that. I've had readings from Erin before, And they're always very detailed. It's like, I don't usually leave wondering what something meant, because usually you're very on point, and I resonate with it very easily. So it's interesting, how every person, someone asked me this the other day in a I don't know, kind of a talk that I was giving. They're like, well, can you have more than one clairsense? And I think, yes, but I also find what's interesting is that each of us has our own little something that we add to readings, add to spirit. Sometimes I think when people go into this as a profession, like we're talking about how you got into this and how you kind of fell into it, it was all, really laid out for you and worked so easily. I just feel like I wish people would know that, sometimes when you look at a new profession like this, you go, oh, well, there's already so many people. There's already so many people that do this. And it's like, no, every person has something special to bring to the table, whether that be your past experiences or your abilities or whatever it is. Everyone has something to offer. And I wish that people would know that, because it can seem like, oh my gosh, we, as human beings, not as spirit, as human beings, tend to judge ourselves, right? Like, oh, I wish I was as good as Erin at XYZ, right? And it's like, why are we doing that to ourselves? We're all divine. We all have a reason for doing what we're doing. And please follow your bliss, because if you really are passionate about this particular topic, do it. You have something to offer. Erin, if somebody was new to this realm, right? They're thinking about doing it, or they're thinking about taking classes. What's some advice that you would offer to somebody that was just entering this field or just entering this as a profession? Based on your experiences, what would you suggest?
I just would suggest follow your heart and your guidance, and also I've really been fortunate in that I've been able to have a lot of peers that I know that are readers, and so that's been helpful to talk with people and exchange stories on what we do, and so that I'm not just I don't have a profession where I don't have colleagues that I can talk to about my profession. So that's always nice, I think, and it creates community and support and all those things. So yeah,
I love it. Yeah, go for it. Right? Everyone has something to offer.
Yeah, I think it's
still make that sound so easy. Just go for it. But it's true. It's true.
Yeah, I really feel whatever you're getting drawn to, that's the next thing to do, whether it leads you to the next thing. So for many years, I just was drawn to different books. I'm a big reader, or I was drawn to different events. I spent a lot of time going to different attending different classes. So, I went to the Mega Institute in New York and took a week-long energy class some years back. And I just had this pull. I had this pull come over me. I have to go to a Mega Institute. I didn't even know what class I was going to take. I knew the week that I was available to take off work, and it was this energy class. And I went. I loved it, and I just kept going around the Chicago area, taking different energy classes and meditation classes, and I call it the metaphysical circuit. I was here this week, right? I was here this week and doing this and attending this workshop. And so, yeah. And I was just drawn to it. I couldn't explain why. I just was drawn to it.
Right. I think sometimes, don't you feel like that's our guides too? I mean, higher self, obviously. I think sometimes we have guides too that are like giving us the nudge, like, come on, you can do it.
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing with guides. I don't have a connection with guides, although I'm sure I have guides. Mm-hmm. I don't have a connection with guides. My connection really has always been with my higher self. And so over the years, I even took a class probably over the years, how to meet your guides, and it just didn't click. So everyone has a different thing. And some people are mediums where they really work well talking with people that have crossed over, and they really focus on that. And so I will get asked that in my readings, and so that I'm open, and sometimes I'll get a message or a sense of something, but that's not my forte. But yeah, I just really just tune into the energy of the person, and then I can tune into different places or people that they may want to know about, and just read the energy related to that. But I encourage people to go to a lot of different clairvoyants or clairaudience or mediums. Go to different people so that you can feel confident and comfortable with the spirit world in general, and that maybe there is some guidance for you if you're new to it. And so I tend to have people that aren't as new to it, that have had readings quite a bit. So, but yeah, I do have new people as well, and I encourage them to go to different readers and see what style you like or you're drawn to.
Right. I agree. I had a reading recently that I really enjoyed. I don't know that I would, it's funny, like you resonate with different readers. So like that particular reader was excellent. I don't know that I would go back to them. I didn't really resonate with them. That's okay. They were an excellent reader. And for somebody else, they'll probably be just who they were looking for, and I think that when we talk about doing this as a profession, so easy to judge ourselves, right? It's like, oh, but I'm not doing what so-and-so is doing. I get this a lot for people that haven't had a reading before because they come with expectations, what they think a reading should be. I had this wonderful teacher one time who basically created what we would call an expectation rose. Like in her mind's eye, she would create this flower that would put into it people's expectations so that when they came to have their reading, then there was less of that, oh, I expect this is what I'm going to see or hear, and really be present and be able to receive what they do receive, because that's what Spirit wanted them to have that particular time. But I do find sometimes when I get people that are new to this, like new to readings, they've seen things on TV, they've had their friends tell them what a reading entails. And when I don't do it exactly like that, they're like, oh, well, you didn't get Cousin Joe who passed away. And I'm like, that's not who came through this time. That's just how it works. All right. So, Erin, we just talked about, different advice that you would give people that were new to this, to this field. And there's a lot of different things that we could cover. But I think a common thing that a lot of people might want to know about is spiritual manners, right? When you're new, you may not know what is considered okay, what's polite, what's not polite. What does spiritual manners mean to you?
This is such a fun topic because I think, for example, I'll have people that, so I work at Quest Bookstore, which is part of the Theosophical Society. So they sell spiritual books, they sell tarot cards, they sell jewelry. And sometimes people will come up to me and they'll want to read me when I didn't ask them for a reading. And so I, will have to politely say, I don't want you to read me, and I appreciate that you have that talent, but I didn't invite that or ask for that. So I do think it's important to ask permission and to ask that. There is some people on some well-known shows where they're walking up to people in grocery stores and asking them if they want a reading, and if they say no, then they honor that,
Right.
That generally, she's got a TV show. So if you have a TV show, that may be different, but just in general, to go up to people, it doesn't seem like that's the best use of manners. And then, so the other thing is I will have people that will just read me indirectly. And so what I mean by that is they'll start talking and then they'll say something which is true about my life, but they'll start they won't say specifically, oh, I can see that you're going through this right now. They'll say, oh, yeah, some people have this issue. And it's like, so you're talking about me and you're trying to be indirect about it, but still talk about me. And you think you're helping me, but really what you're doing is you're invading my privacy. So yeah, I think that that's important to have spiritual boundaries, and just like you would in everyday life, if you knew somebody was going through something, you just don't randomly start bringing it up because you know what's going on. But yeah.
Right.
So
that I read online called it looking up somebody's spiritual skirts. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, it's just it's like poking them in the chest. It's a physical kind of boundary violation. Nobody likes to be poked in the chest, even if it's gentle or, if you don't know the person, it's not going to be wanted. So don't do it, people.
I agree. Actually, that makes me think of another question. So when somebody comes in for a session, sometimes they can be anxious about what you might see. What would you want to say to somebody that's never had a session before about any anxiety they might have about having a session? And how do you put them at ease when they read with you?
Yes. Well, I can always tell if they're super nervous that I always will say this. So I do have clients that are very nervous and they haven't had reading before, or they haven't had many readings before, or it's been a long time and I can see their anxiety. And so I will say, I am not going to know your deep, dark secrets. I don't want to know your deep, dark secrets. I'm only going to know what your higher self wants me to know and what's in the best interest for you to know right now. So your higher self is not going to tell me things that you don't want me to know.
Right.
And so, and I found that to be true. Fortunately, that's been true in all my readings. So, that does, seem to put them at ease a little bit, but they never know until you do a reading and then they realize that it was okay and nothing was revealed about something that they thought would be revealed. And that, I think, goes to the spiritual manners, because there are people that can see certain things that may not be appropriate to share. And so that they may have had that experience, or maybe they knew somebody that did that. And so then they're worried that maybe I can do that. I can't do that. And I'm glad I can't do that because I don't want to do that.
Right.
So, yeah. That's the other thing too, is because I'm a clairvoyant, sometimes people think that in everyday life, I'm just 24/7 reading and seeing things about people. And I can assure you I'm not. And I am glad for that as well, that it is, I can turn it off and on. And when I intend to have it on to do reading, it works and it's on. But when I'm not doing readings, I'm just a regular person. I'm not clairvoyant in everyday life.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I shut it off most of the time. I try to leave some open, if my guides are trying to get a hold of me. But they've worked out their own system. They're like, she's turned it off. So what I'll get is I'll get little tickles. Like, okay, so what's it? All right, I'll stop what I'm doing. If I'm not driving, I'll stop what I'm doing and see what you want. But yeah, for the most part, I turn it off. And the thing is, I think you're right in that it is all about manners. And if you're not comfortable, if somebody starts going on about something you're not comfortable about, stop. Just tell them to stop. You're paying for a service, right? It's like, if this is getting into a realm that you're not comfortable talking about, you can get up and leave if you want to, but definitely tell them that it's not appropriate. But I haven't really ran into that. Most of the people that I've had readings with are usually pretty sensitive, even when it is a difficult topic. They're usually pretty general. I had one recently that was hysterical. They're like, I can see you've been through some stuff. Yeah, Yes, I have. But what a great way to say that rather than, intricately going through somebody's life plan of what they've had to go through, because yes, we've all been through different experiences that our higher self wanted to have. And, you may or may not want to talk about that, but most professional people, I believe, are really good about trying to keep things on a professional level, but just know that, yes, you can stop a session at any point if you're not comfortable, please. So on social media, this is another thing that is a pet peeve of mine. Other people, it may not bother them, but I will never direct message somebody and say, I felt drawn to you, or I feel like I have a message for you. Some people may do that with good intent, but I always feel like that's more of a sales tactic. And I will never do that. If you, resonate with me and you know where to find me, you're welcome to ask about a reading. But be cautious when somebody tries to message you off the side or even in person. I feel drawn to you. That may be the case, but more times than not, it's usually a sales tactic, and I'm not comfortable with that. So that's my
Yes, no, I agree, and thanks for mentioning that too. I'm not too active on social media. I have a website, and that's pretty much it. So, but I think that's great advice. Yes, if somebody's initiating those kind of things, like, oh, I want to tell you something. I have a message for you. No, that's not a good sign. Yeah.
So, last question. How has becoming a professional psychic changed your life or how you look at the world?
Is that all you want to know?
I know. We have an hour. I don't know. Nearly not known here. Bullet points.
Oh my God.
Bullet points.
So I just enjoy using my gifts, and I view it in a positive way. So I just want to help people feel more clarity, more empowered, more, maybe some healing. Maybe sometimes I'm just providing some space to be heard. But I think take what I do with don't put too much weight on coming to me like this. Oh, I'm going to psychic and I'm going to get this answer that I need. No. It's meant to be, I view myself as being a good listener and a good energy reader. So I'm just reading some energy that may be in your field and giving you some insight into something that can help move you forward, possibly in a positive way. Yes.
Beautiful. All right. Last, Erin, if somebody would like to do a reading with you, how would they find you?
So I have a website called thesoulsleadership.com, and souls is plural. So it's THESOULS leadership.com. And you can reach out to me, send me an email or a phone text message, and we can set up an appointment.
Perfect.
Or if you're at the Quest bookstore in Wheaton, Illinois, you can call ahead of time. I work there on Saturdays, and you can set up an appointment on Saturday to meet in person.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had a wonderful, engaged conversation, and I hope that it helps many people out there that are looking into this topic and would like to have some advice.